tough as this day is, and the rest of the session will be without his leadership in the Rules Committee and sitting in that chair, he would want us to continue our work, Speaker, on behalf of this great state. And in his memory, that's exactly what we will do.
The Georgia House loses one of its own. Governor Brian Kemp visits the chamber to talk about the former House colleague, longtime member, Representative Richard Smith of Columbus. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers. On day 12 of the Georgia legislative session, I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. The Georgia House started on a somber note with the news of the death overnight of the chairman of the Rules Committee. You will hear more of the touching tributes to Smith coming up. In the studio, our guests will talk about Georgia's push to improve reading skills. The effort began last year with a law establishing the Georgia Council on Literacy. And we'll talk about bills patterned after so-called red flag laws in other states aimed at preventing people deemed dangerous from buying firearms. But first, Capitol correspondent Sarah Callis tells us what took place today at the Gold Dome.
Hi, Donna. Lawmakers started day 12 with sad and shocking news. House Rules Chairman Richard Smith passed away overnight after battling the flu. He was 78. Speaker of the House John Burns paid emotional tribute to Smith, who had served in the House for nearly 20 years.
He knew you all. He cared for you all. He appreciated you all. And I dare say he loved us all.
Governor Brian Kemp also addressed the chamber to mourn Smith.
When he was your friend, you knew it. There were times when he was standing with me when others were not. But that didn't bother him. He just did what he thought was right. And I know he did the same thing, serving as committee chairman and as the rules chairman, which you all know is a very tough job. But he was a great legislator.
Smith's colleagues in the House remembered him as a leader and a friend.
Columbus has lost a giant of a man in the loss of Richard Smith. We were all saddened and heartbroken to hear of his passing. But when I think of Richard, I think about the fact that a friend never really dies, as long as you keep their memory alive. And I want you to know that our delegation is going to continue and work in the honor and the manner that Richard has set out for us.
He and I were seatmates in the House chamber for about 8 years, and not only was he a great legislative leader, but he was a personal friend. And so very saddened by the loss, praying for his family and the entire House of Representatives right now. He will truly be missed, and the state capitol won't be the same without him.
The House decided to shorten their day as members dealt with the loss of Smith. While the business of the day continued in the Senate, it was also a day of remembrance. While Chairman Smith was never part of their chamber, that didn't stop senators from remembering his legacy and his influence.
Richard Smith was a true gentleman. He was a true statesman, and he is a vital cog in our local legislative delegation. Richard, you knew where he stood at all times. You could be away from him, with him, and it's going to be the same way. And I just really admired him, and his great contribution to the great state of Georgia will sorely be missed.
Everybody says the world's a little darker and there's a vacuum when somebody that they care about passes away. My mentor passed away, but I know he's watching over me, and I know the senator from the 15th is going to keep me in line, but let us never forget that there are examples that we could follow to make us better human beings, and Richard Smith was one of those examples.
Following a moment of silence for Smith, a second influential Georgian was remembered.
A proclamation celebrating the life and legacy of former First Lady Rosalynn Carter.
Her grandson, former State Senator Jason Carter, was there to celebrate the moment and speak to her contributions spotlighting mental health issues.
I think that one of the highlights of her life was when this body and the State House a few years ago adopted the parity bill that I know a lot of you worked on with respect to mental illness. And my only point in saying that is that her legacy, I appreciate this, but her legacy flows through this place in real ways. And I just pray, as we did today when they talked about examples, whether they be from Nehemiah or from the people in our lives that are important to us, we just remember it's possible to do good here.
Another of the 3 Georgian soldiers lost during a drone attack in Jordan last week was also honored by Senator Derek Mallow. Brianna Moffitt was a specialist in the Army Reserve and grew up in Savannah. Mallow spoke with Brianna's ROTC mentor about pushing the young soldier to be her best.
He did push her to be better because she did join the United States Army, and he understood that there is no greater love than this, than a friend that lays down his life for his friend. And there's no greater service that those 3 American heroes could have done by sacrificing their lives so that we can truly all enjoy freedom.
And finally, a visit from U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock, bringing a bipartisan message.
When we passed the American Rescue Plan, Senator Ossoff and I secured $1.2 billion in incentives to help Georgia expand. So if we can find a bipartisan path to getting this done, there's $1.2 billion sitting there for the citizens of Georgia to make the glide path easier, to get Medicaid done for working families in Georgia. And so I hope we can find a way to do it.
And an opportunity for senators to literally reach across the aisle during a brief prayer. Then the Senate got busy, passing 5 bills, from expanding veteran pensions to creating an annual First Responders Remembrance Day on September 11th each year. Later in the day, the United Campus Workers visited the Capitol to push for better wages, collective bargaining, and academic freedom. Plans for Representative Smith's memorial service have yet to be announced. Tomorrow, on day 13, Governor Brian Kemp is expected to sign the anti-Semitism bill into law in a public event. That's all for my Capitol Report. Donna, back to you.
A huge thanks to Sarah for that report. According to World Population Review, Georgia is listed as 41 out of 50 states when it comes to low literacy. Last year, the General Assembly began trying to turn that around. And joining me are 2 people who are part of that effort. Republican Senator Billy Hickman is chairman of the Senate Higher Education Committee, and Scott Johnson is chairman of the Georgia Literacy Council. He is principal of Southern Strategic Solutions of Marietta. Thank you both for being here for Lawmakers. As we start, I want to draw attention to a few numbers. When it comes to 3rd grade reading levels, 56% of 3rd graders in Georgia are not ready to move on to the 4th grade because of reading. And also, a 2017 Deloitte study revealed over 1 million adults are low literate, and low literacy is a generational cycle. This is all from a report by the Georgia Literacy Council. And Chairman Hickman, you were part of the primary sponsor of the bill last year, Senate Bill 211, to set up the Georgia Literacy Council. So talk about that.
Yes, Donna, those numbers that you gave are so embarrassing to me and so upsetting to me, to live in such a great state as Georgia and have such a low literacy rate. You know, we really didn't think our rate was that low because we were gauging everything based upon our graduation rates. Every school in Georgia graduates 85, 90, 95%, but then, like you said, 50% of them are reading on grade level. That's the hypocrisy about this situation. Now, I actually dove down a little bit further in the last few days, and I won't disclose the school system that I'm going to tell you about, but their numbers in 2023 were in the 3rd grade, only 59% in 3rd grade, 59% in 3rd grade were not reading on grade level. In 5th grade, 53% were not reading on grade level. 8th grade, 62%. This is a crisis that we're dealing with, and thank goodness that we got Scott Johnson, the Literacy Council, looking at this, and we'll talk about House Bill 538 in a few minutes. But let me tell you a little bit about this bill.
Okay.
This bill actually had focused on 4 different things. It focused on birth to 5, it focuses on K to 3, and it focuses on whether colleges and universities are teaching our teachers how to teach children to read, and then it focuses on community involvement. I want to one day drive into your county, wherever you live, and see a sign that says, home of Gwinnett County, the highest literacy rates in the state of Georgia. If we have those numbers, we will be changing lives, we'll be changing families, and we'll be changing generations. And that's what the Literacy Council is going to do, and that's what House Bill 538 is going to do.
Because it's a workforce problem, too.
Oh, well, yeah, if you can't read, you can't work. And it really not only is a workforce problem, it's a national security issue. You think about the level of the technology in the armed forces today, and if our Army people or Navy or Marine people can't read, they can't protect us.
Wow, that's absolutely true, and it's very
Seriously.
frightening, actually, when you put it that way. So, Mr. Johnson, let's talk all about the Georgia Literacy Council. Bring us up to date on what you guys have been doing.
Well, Donna, so the Literacy Council is 30 members, leaders from our education community, from our legislature, and from our business community that will focus on changing the trajectory of literacy for the future of our state. We can't maintain being the best place or the best place to do business unless we've got great employees. So it is a workforce development issue. But I love to say every time I talk about literacy that this is Georgia's most solvable problem. And I truly believe it is. We're going to take it on with a task force mentality. This council has a lifespan to the end of 2026. So it's not a forever thing, but it is something that I hope that, well, we will change the trajectory. And a lot of what our importance is cross-agency alignment on literacy. So we're working with the Department of Education, the Governor's Office of Student Achievement, the Department of Early Care and Learning, Professional Standards Commission, the Technical College System of Georgia, the University System of Georgia, and the State Board of Education to all focus our priority on literacy. And I think we can do it, and we can change our trajectory of literacy in the future.
And I know the Georgia Chamber is very interested in what you're doing. Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a lot of effort behind all of this. So, Chairman Hickman, another very important literacy bill also passed last year. It was kind of a partner with this. And it was House Bill 538. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, House Bill 538 was passed by Representative Betsy Ballard. A great bill. What it did for those of us, in very simple terms, it brings back phonics to reading. Now, it has some definite dates in it, has some definite timelines. For instance, by August the 1st of this year, 24, schools will be mandatory to give screening, which is testing where children can read 3 different times a year. And if a child cannot meet certain levels, then there's plans to put it in place to help that child learn how to read. And that's a big part of that. It's going to also work to teach our existing teachers how to teach children to read. So it's a very much a hands-on, get it done by a target date bill.
Yeah, and it's something that people, you can start on right now. This isn't one of those wait a few years. Let's work on it right now, and that's what you guys are planning. Yeah. Because there are some people who don't understand why phonics is gone anyhow. So this is bringing back something that some of us, that's the way we were taught. Yeah, me too. Yeah. So let's talk about that. What are you going to be able to do with the Georgia Literacy Council when it comes to this?
So House Bill 538 just prescribed that we focus in Georgia on something called the science of reading. Phonics is a part of it. But overall, it's a science that says this is how the brain works, and this is how children learn to read best. It's also called structured literacy, and one of the council's duties is to monitor the implementation of what's prescribed in House Bill 538, and report on that progress to the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the General Assembly.
There's going to need to be assessments, right, in order to be able to make that report.
That's right, there are. And the council is also able to do things like, so when the State Board of Education passed a list of screeners that Senator Hickman mentioned, that children will be screened 3 times a year, then we worked with the Sandra Deal Center at the Georgia College and State University to do an evaluation, a psychometric evaluation, but what that's a fancy word for how effective are these screeners that districts have the choice to to choose and work with and screen their students, and they did an evaluation of those screeners, and we distributed that to every school district in the state.
Wow. So the big thing always is who's going to pay for it? How is the state going to pay for it? Is there a fiscal note on this?
Well, there's a fiscal note, but there is in the budget. The governor put, I believe the number is somewhere around $6.5 million, and the Department of Education has identified at least 32 literacy coaches that will be divided. There's 16 RESA districts in Georgia, and there'll be 2 literacy coaches assigned to each RESA district, RESA districts, and they will monitor whether teachers are being taught how to teach children reading. They'll also help the teachers monitor all of it.
Yeah, so it's something where there'll be these coaches, but certainly at the district level, it'll have to come up where they are able to teach these teachers how to better teach how to read.
Yeah, and you know, I've had 2 different superintendents in the last month who said they have never heard in their whole life of professionally as much talk about literacy as they have since these 2 bills have been passed.
Yeah, we've got a lot going on in our state, especially when it comes to workforce development, and this is all part of it.
Yes, yeah. Prioritization of literacy is what this is about, and we believe we can change the future with it.
Okay.
Can I make one statement?
Yes, absolutely.
As literacy goes up, crime goes down. As literacy goes up, teenage pregnancy goes down. As literacy goes up, human trafficking goes down. As literacy goes up, drug use goes down. And we can measure it.
Yeah, it's tied to a lot of things. Well, we're going to keep talking about this.
I don't know if this is the most important thing Georgia will work on in the next decade, but I can tell you with assurance, it is as important as anything our state will engage in the next decade.
Well, we're going to keep up with it. Thank you both for coming on the show to talk about it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Coming up, we'll look at bills aimed at curbing gun violence.
Get out here.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
People put their faith in PBS because they know that it is constantly delivering quality. It covers the whole of the United States. It's a free and independent media.
We go where the viewers are.
What are the conversations that are happening right now?
We feel that civil discourse is a civic responsibility.
What we do is authentic reporting that people can trust.
We give time so you can hear voices on all sides of an issue.
This is the place that people turn to for stories that matter.
And they know that when they walk away, they will have learned something about the world around them.
That's why this makes PBS important for daily life and, in the end, our world.
Thank you for joining us.
Community. Learning, working, playing, celebrating, doing life is always better together. At GPB, we aim to provide you with the tools to be able to do life together well. Our mission to educate, inform, and entertain inspires everything from our wide range of programming to our stimulating radio conversations to our fun in-person events. We've got something for everyone. Visit gpb.org/community to learn more about our upcoming events.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. Last fall, nearly 4 dozen Georgia mayors from both sides of the aisle sent a letter to Governor Kemp and state lawmakers urging them to pass stricter gun laws. We're going to look at efforts to do just that with 2 House Democrats. Joining us is Representative Shay Roberts of Sandy Springs. She's on the Governmental Affairs, Judicial Non-Civil, State Planning, Community Affairs, all of those committees. And Representative Long Tran of Dunwoody. His committee assignments include code revision, creative arts and entertainment, and technology and innovation. Welcome to Lawmakers, your first time. Appreciate you coming on.
you.
Appreciate this. Representative Roberts, I'm going to start with you. You have a couple of bills focusing on guns and domestic violence. So tell us about HB 584, the Georgia Red Flag Protective Order Act, and HB 875, which looks to make sure someone convicted of family violence offenses can not possess or purchase a firearm.
Correct. So both of these are aimed towards making sure that folks who are in some sort of mental crisis or have exhibited some sort of criminal behavior are not able to get guns. We're not talking about law-abiding gun owners here. The last thing we want is for domestic abusers to have access to guns. You know, women are 5 times more likely to die in a domestic violence situation if a gun is present. And 1 in 5 women will be in some sort of violent domestic violence situation. So that's pretty scary. And so the idea is there is due process. That's sometimes the criticism. You know, they either have to be convicted of a misdemeanor or they get to go and present their case before a judge. And if the judge extends the family PTO, sometimes it's 6 months, 12 months, then they are not allowed to receive, transport, possess firearms. And the statistics in other states show that this has improved this issue by about 12%. And so there are other states that have it. We have a federal law. It's currently being considered by the Supreme Court, though, so we're a little nervous about how that's going to come down.
I know in the past we've had victims, women in particular, and these instances, who've come down to the Capitol to testify about what happened to them in domestic violence situations, who were shot by their domestic partners,
right?
And because guns were around.
Yes, we've had several come down and testify. One woman, I'm blanking on her name right now, but he would have killed her and her kids if they had been there. Luckily, they were okay, but she's in a wheelchair, paralyzed as a result of it. And so that's the other thing, is there's a ripple effect. Kids witness it, or they're also murdered as well. Georgia's number 4 in the country for murder-suicide.
Number 4?
Number 4.
Wow.
So these are just common sense ways that we could try and curb this epidemic that is the number 1 killer of our kids and teens.
Yeah. So I want to talk about it. So that's dealing with guns. You also are part of Representative Michelle Owl's bill. She's got the bill that deals with protecting the guns and making sure they're safe when it comes to having children around. Talk about that.
So we want to encourage gun owners to safely store their guns and provide trigger locks, because the reality is a lot of these kids are curious and they want to go find the guns, and they'll do whatever they can. And if they're not stored safely, most likely the kid will get the gun and accidentally discharge it because there's no trigger lock and the gun's not in a safe. And so we want to encourage Georgians to purchase safe storage devices and get a tax incentive, much like an accountant who buys a filing cabinet gets a tax incentive.
Yeah, I know last year, that's the bill has changed a little bit.
It has.
Last year it was money that they received, but now a tax incentive is what we're looking at.
Yes.
And I know there was a hearing last year, and so it at least got that far.
It got that far.
Where is it now?
So the bill's changed a little bit, and we're hoping it gets another hearing. There's, some of the language in the bill, it's now House Bill 971, but I am excited that we've got bipartisan support. It's actually this year sponsored by Rep. Newton, Scott Hilton, Rep. Matt Reeves, and Deborah Silcox. And so this year, it's not only providing a credit for safe storage, but for training as well.
Yeah. So bipartisan support there. What about with you? You know, the majority party has been pushing back against anything that restricts gun use and possession.
Well, it's funny, this domestic violence one, former Senator Jen Jordan filed a similar bill in 2019, and it actually had full support in the Senate Judiciary Committee, passed bipartisan, unanimous, and then I think the gun lobbies got involved and it got shut down. So we're really struggling, even though we've had mayors from across the state, in Republican and Democratic areas begging for these laws to try and address this very serious issue.
So we'll see what happens with yours. Safe storage is a possibility. It might move forward with
I'm
that
hoping
bipartisan support. Okay. I want to talk about something else, and I'll begin with you. You are the lead sponsor of the Reproductive Freedom Act.
Correct.
Talk about that, what it is and what you want to do with it.
So HB 75 is the Reproductive Freedom Act, is our vision for what we want to see for reproductive freedom in Georgia. It goes further than Roe. It not only repeals the restrictive abortion bans, almost near total abortion ban. Most women don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. But it also would expand access, because even when Roe was the law of the land, poor women could not afford the access. And so we would like to also see some insurance coverage, Medicaid, and private insurers in the marketplace cover this kind of care, because it is health care. And that's the important thing, is we want doctors to stop being criminalized. I held a hearing last week, and we heard from some very esteemed doctors talk about how they have lawyers on their care teams now. They have to consult people before they decide whether to administer life-saving care sometimes. These are quick decisions, and with our state having one of the highest maternal mortality and infant mortality rate in the country, the last thing we need to do is to drive doctors away from our state right now.
And the way you want to do this bill is calling for a constitutional amendment.
So there's also a constitutional resolution.
Okay.
I'm on that one, but I'm not the lead sponsor of that. But both, that would enshrine it in our actual Constitution, that it would require a much higher standard to overturn it later on.
Okay.
We're making all kinds of efforts. We're just, it's a struggle. And women in Georgia, just like around this country, we've seen they're showing up at the ballot box and they're voting on these issues. And we know that 70 to 80% of Georgians support reproductive abortion care in the state.
Well, we'll be following that bill too. So
thank you so much.
I want to talk to you about something that you're you're a signer on education legislation that deals with undocumented students and making sure, and when it comes to education, they're taken care of.
So we know we have a workforce problem here in Georgia. And right now, unfortunately, I see these high school kids who pledge allegiance to the flag every single day, but the moment they graduate from high school, because their parents are undocumented and they themselves are undocumented, they do not get in-state tuition. Some of these kids are valedictorians coming out of high school. And so they get wooed away by Connecticut or our neighbor, Florida. And those states are willing to invest in these kids and give them not just in-state tuition in those states, but scholarships as well. And if we want to have a highly skilled labor force, we need as many kids who are willing to go to college as possible. We also need the kids who go to trade schools as well. But we got to focus on that. And the reality is, when these kids leave for other states, their parents go with them. And we lose a labor force to these other states. And we see it across all of our industries, whether it's hospitality, restaurant, construction. You know, we want to build more homes, but we don't have the folks that can build the homes.
Yeah, you have some bipartisan support on that too.
There is. It's led by Casey Carpenter, and Rep. Pedro Marin and I are co-signers on it. And so there's bipartisan support because we all understand the workforce challenge, and the Georgia Chamber understands and is supportive of this bill. But
what are you thinking at this point in terms of getting it anywhere?
We had it heard in committee last year,
okay.
And we were hoping it was going to go up for a vote for the first time ever in committee, and it's looking like that may happen this time.
Okay, all right, we'll keep up with that. Yeah, you're in support of this.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Rep. Carpenter has brought this bill in my last term as well, and so this is important legislation. It needs to move.
Well, thank you both for coming here and talking about your priorities. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That does it for Lawmakers tonight.
Thank you.
We'll be back tomorrow with details of the governor signing the anti-Semitism bill and more. Good night.